Hello, and welcome to the Argyle SMB Accounting Forum. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have some important information to share with you, and then we will turn the floor over to our esteemed opening keynote speaker. We also welcome you to stay socially connected during today's event. For those of you who are active tweeters, please use the hashtag ArgyleDigital and follow us on Twitter at Argyle Exec Forum. Also, be sure to follow Argyle on LinkedIn for special announcements. I would like to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we have curated based on the feedback we have received over the years from our members. We have worked closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today, and we appreciate our members' support of this policy. Finally, and most importantly, we want to hear from you. So during each session, we encourage you to submit your questions and comments in the Q&A box on your screen. Following each presentation, we have set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on your questions. Thank you again for joining us today. Now, let's get started. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Geeta Sharifi, Chief Financial Officer, Lifelong Learning Administration Corporation. We are excited to have Geeta for her opening keynote presentation titled Harnessing the Power of Data Analytics. Welcome, Geeta. Over to you.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here and sharing some of my expertise and background with all of you. I've been a CFO for 20 years, so I've been in different companies and analyzed data from the time it was more manual to now that is more automated. So I just want to go over what we're going to go and discuss today. We have a very short time. So if you have any questions, I'll go through your questions as I see fit and try to respond to them. We have about half an hour. So I'll stop if I couldn't answer at the end, and we'll respond to your questions. What we're going to discuss today is basically how data analytics is a game changer for finance and how CFOs could use it real time, best practices, and how data analytics can help improve forecasting, financial planning and analysis, and also scenario planning. So what is data analytics? Obviously, it's a game changer. I'm sure most of you are using some form of data analytics for your decision making. It's a process basically of storing the data, organizing the data, and analyzing the data. And there's certain things that are key items that you must have in order to be able to analyze your data. One is to have data points. Second, tech-enabled strategy and connected intelligence insights, and an analytical team in order to make a better decision. So I would call those key items, but obviously there's a lot that goes along in analyzing your data in order to make a better informed decision. It is a game changer. I just want to touch on a couple of bullets. These days, we use artificial intelligence, machine learning in order to use our data wisely. A lot of companies, or maybe some, or maybe none, and they're going to be doing it in the future, are developing data lakes, dumping all of their data into one place, and then combining the data and pulling dashboards and matrix in order to make better decision. It does, if you use AI and machine learning, obviously it will reduce manual work, but not necessarily cut any staff, or positions. Internal and external, that could be something that could be used for any internal data or any data that you pull from outside. A lot of companies do comparable analysis with other companies, likewise, what their industry is doing. They want to see and compare how they perform compared to external organizations. And there's a lot of data out there, and you can take those data and combine it and do a comparison analysis. Data gives you a story, right? I mean, if we are a finance people, sometimes I tell people, if I look at the data as a CFO, it's like looking, I can kind of put a story behind it. But for people that are not finance savvy as much, which we have different departments within the organization, you need to be able to analyze and help them to use that data to, give a proper storytelling. And it's difficult for people that are not number people. So data analysis and putting it in a way where it's meaningful to people that are not number people within the organization for decision making is really critical. It makes you have honestly making better decisions. If you have the data that's valid and you have validated the data, you should have means to do that. It's a great tool to make decision making. You can create dashboards, simple dashboards for main data that you're pulling from all of your data lake for your management, or even for line staff, or for specific departments to daily look and analyze how they're performing. It does enhance reporting. A lot of people in the past, we didn't have as much visual reports. Now we have a lot of charts and graphs and trends and historical data. It's more visual, so it's easier and quick to catch what's going on. You get real-time information. You don't have to wait like old times that we used to, as accountants, used to close the books, wait a couple of days, analyze, make sure everything's correct, and then pull a report for management. You can do it real time. You don't have to wait for books to be closed. It gives you a better picture if you use your data well. If you combine the data, I always say it's not just financial information. There's a lot of programmatic or other divisions that their data is critical for management to make decisions. Marketing, technology, your program, for example, if you're healthcare, your patients, your customers, all of that could be combined, with your financials, revenue and expenses, and pulled together to see the relationship. There are these days some really simple tools that the finance team can be trained in, like Power BI. I mean, you can go outsource these tools, or you can have other companies or third party, or hire someone to do them. But there are some tools that are easily can be used by your team, and you can train them very quickly to use and make those data more meaningful. And there's a lot of talk about Chat GPT, and I'm sure you've heard of that. And it's just kind of like it's one of those buzzing terminologies these days. There's a lot of tools out there now that are surfacing that they're using data analytics in combination with Chat GPT. We used to hire coders and people that were very highly skilled, to write those programs. With Chat GPT, you cannot even know that the coding and actually pull and request what you need to do. With some of the best practices, I just want to touch on, can data be misunderstood? Yes. So it's really important that you, when you're putting your dashboards together based on the data, you really analyze it. So it's not misanalyzed or you're misinforming, your audience. I just wanted to give you some example. For example, I'm in Education. We manage public schools throughout nationally and internationally. Sometimes when we say, as an example, we service 60,000 students, and our revenues based on average daily attendance, or ADA, and our ADA is 20,000. That means that's what we get paid, regardless of how many students are in attendance across all of our schools. What does that mean? 20,000 is average daily attendance, but then we had 60,000 students. So if you just put that out there, there's no correlation on, between the 20,000 and the 60,000. But if you go back and pull historical data, for example, if last year you had 40,000 students, but you also had, again, 20,000 ADA, you can then see, then you had last year more students attending and maybe earning credits. That equates to 20,000 versus this year you had 60,000, but maybe they just didn't attend. You just had them on your roster. So you can compare if you have historical data. And with that, if you start gathering your data, I always say start gathering them. You need to start somewhere in a data lake. And then as you gather data, you can also combine some past history if you can, and then look at some trends, because that's then more meaningful versus just a snapshot of that moment, what's happening. It gives you a frame of reference, if you compare with historical data. But you must always identify bottlenecks and pain points in general when you're, trying to develop and use data for your decision making. You want to make sure that your labor, your human capital, are skilled. If they're not, like when I mentioned Power BI, you can always upskill your employees, and train them. It's a great staff development. Always look at history, always get the buy-in from your line staff and management and different departments. Develop a plan if you want to change a dashboard or creating a platform for decision making. Obviously you want to make sure that the time that you're spending is worthwhile. Understand why you need to do it. If somebody comes to you and into your finance team and asks that I want certain dashboard, you really want to know the big picture, why you're creating it. So maybe it's useful for other departments. Who's giving you that information is important. Definitely have checks and balances. Yes, automation, AI, ML, all of that is critical in data analytics, but you definitely want to have checks and balances to make that data is accurate. I give you one example. We upgraded in a healthcare setting to a clinical database. The way the programs were put in place, pulling the data, was at some areas was pointing the tables were pointing to different tables. So if you pulled one certain reports, for example, it would give you a different date of birth for that patient, and then you would pull another one, it would give you a different date of birth. So so we had to go back and clean it up and make sure that so you want to do testing and make sure that there are checks and balances. Don't just rely 100% on your data analysis tools, and you definitely want to have that in place to have basically accuracy and integrity of the data. You want to establish core matrix, have KPIs, identify based on your industry what's important. You can gather as many data as you want, but obviously the data should be something that it's useful to you. Definitely inform your strategy with continuous forecasting and modeling, which is very critical. You can use that for that purpose, and you can also use AI for your forecasting. perfect processes and workflow. And with that, I want to just give a quick example. For example, at a company, we upgraded our purchasing and using all the data that we had, and we wanted to capture as many as data as possible so we can streamline our audit process. But what happened was when we automated that whole system and the data that we had into a easy format and accessible to everyone, we didn't think about the actual workflow and the processes that we had in place that was manual at the time. So as we were automating and using all these data to create, easy dashboards and stuff for decision making, we realized that there are some processes that needs to change. So at the same time we were doing that, we were also changing processes to capture those data, which made it so much more lengthier because we didn't perfect the process and workflow before using that data. So you just want to make sure that your process and workflow is working when you are doing it manually and pulling the data in whichever way you have. Maybe you're still on Excel, and then, definitely automate it. And also communication and training. You might assume some of your staff know and are comfortable with using data and manipulating it, but, they might not. So you want to definitely make sure that you touch on that and skill your employees, train them, make sure they know how to use the data. You can use the data for financial planning and analysis. I touched on ChatGPT. Definitely look into it. Be a forward thinker. It's out there. Everybody's talking about it, but it's an awesome tool. So train your staff. I just signed up. I had my assistant look into finding some classes, online webinars and stuff on the ChatGPT so that we could use it properly, in the right format. I know some of my staff are already using it, but I just want to make sure that how we're using it and make it, so that they learn and use it efficiently. Make it simple. When using ChatGPT, it makes life a lot easier, and you don't need development expertise. As I mentioned earlier, you don't need coders. You can actually speak to it. Generating data drives value. You can make more impactful decisions for future, for depending, like what we went through during pandemic. A lot of companies were struggling suddenly how to manage their cash and cash flow, and they were doing it manually, and they needed to know their financial health really quickly because they were navigating a lot of changes, right? I always suggest to use predictive analytics through machine learning and algorithms instead of doing it manually. So I always say, like in the past, in my finance departments, we were just struggling to, gather data and figure out, putting things together instead of really having the data in a dashboard and looking at it and start thinking and making good decisions. Most of our times we're used in just pulling the data and creating reports. Data analytics in general accelerates growth because you are looking at the data, what you have. It's not like, again, waiting for you to close the books and all that. So you have the data readily. It's good to have it, and you need to know what kind of data you have, and it's useful. You can pivot quickly and during difficult times. You can use it for your cash flow and cash flow analysis and financial future modeling for your cash flow. You can demand planning for a product. If you can look at your with the data, you can look at the number of customers. A lot of marketing people look at the website to see the traffic and if certain advertisements or marketing impacts their customer or profit or all of that. So all of that could be combined. Again, it's not just financial numbers. It could be a lot of other divisions that could play into all these data that you're gathering and using it for your management. You can use the data for risk assessment and analysis. Again, real-time forecasts. You can do campaign planning. Again, look at the customer behavior I just mentioned. And this with decision makings with less errors. And as I mentioned, having checks and balances. You can automate to save time and improve efficiency, and again, enhance forecasting. Definitely one thing I just want to make sure and touch on is to explore technologies, different technologies. Take your time. Don't do it quickly, because you can spend years sometimes developing certain technology to automate and use your data in a certain way. And then you spend a lot of money, and then what happens? People don't use it, or it's not useful really. And you keep pushing, oh, I spent so much time, and why nobody's using it? Well, if nobody's using it, and they can pick up the phone and let's say call their controller to ask a similar question, and they get the answer in 2 seconds, they're not going to log in and put the password and go into a system and pull the data themselves. So you want to make it easy. You want to make the data very accessible. So whatever system you use definitely has to be a system that could be visually give you the information and readily accessible, instead of logging into 10 different dashboards or apps. And you want to make sure whatever technology you use is integrated with your financial system. So it's not a separate system that you have to access. It's integrated with your financial system. There are some questions in the chat. Let me just quickly see. It says how to improve the entire financial planning and analysis function, including making better predictions and improving forecasting. I would say the better way is definitely explore different technologies. There are a lot of technologies out there. I'm not going to promote or say one's good or bad, but through my time, I have used some that, we literally spent a couple of years and we ended up not using it anymore. And we went to a simpler version, again, because of the accessibility and the time needing to pull that information or the report. So definitely look into different technologies. And there's a question that says, what recommendation can you make for organizations struggling to get the most value out of data analytics? I would suggest personally within my organization or any industry. I'm in education. I was in healthcare for a very long time. Is to sit with all of your chiefs or VPs top level, and then also ask them to go talk to their team, their supervisees, and identify what are the KPIs, what are the areas that they need to really assess, and they need data, right, to make better decisions for their divisions. And then pull all of that data into a data lake from program, from marketing, from consumer data, all of that financial, your income statement. If you pull it all into one place, then you can have a bigger picture data, right? Then it's more meaningful, because my financial data is meaningful if I put it side by side with my marketing efforts, and my technology enhancement. So you want to see all of that, because they're all related, even though they're not finance, but in order to make a decision, let's say forecasting, or let's say you want to grow, or you want to diversify, or you want to merge, you want to see all of that in one place. So having all of your data in one place, that if a division wants their own data, they can pull it, with their own data separately. But you want to be able to combine them so that it's more meaningful. There's another question, says, what role will AI or automation play in regard to harnessing the power of data? It is really important. We upgraded a system, and I started getting complaints from some of my team members, and they said, oh, our financial system learns when we input data, and the next time the person goes in knows, they just copy it, and they don't have to re-enter, so it saves time. But the system we upgraded, it doesn't do that. So why it doesn't do that is, does it not have AI? I was like, it's impossible. If a system that's so new. And I remember when we signed up for it, it did have AI in it. So there's machine learning already built in. So apparently the staff didn't know it had it. It had a lot of features that we're not using. They didn't know how to turn on or enable that feature. So we simply had some trainings, and then the staff started using it. So definitely, having AI, when whatever technology that you use for your data, definitely has to have some kind of machine learning or AI in it to improve accuracy, number one, and then efficiency. Question, how will the use of data and analytics continue to evolve over the next few years? Honestly, I think it's kind of scary hearing everything about ChatGPT, but use it wisely, right? So start learning about it. Definitely all the top level management need to understand ChatGPT, because it's a very revolutionary technology out there. And then train your staff, train them so they can use it, but use it properly. Do you have some sample systems? I do, but I don't want to really advertise anything here, but I would suggest, for any data lake or any exploring technologies, just look at demos. There are so many out there, but what you want to know and what the questions that you want to ask is critical. So I would say start talking to your team and see what the gaps are within your organization, what you want out of those new systems and the data, and then from that, then start looking. So don't go data mining, from these software companies. Just know exactly what you need, and then go search for what fits what you need. So with that, I know we're answering questions. So we have one time. I'm gonna pass on to Eric.
Thank you, Geeta, for an excellent keynote. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event.